This is The Toss-Up, where an expert line panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports. From some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that capture the world's attention, it's all right here on The Toss-Up. How many headline-worthy stories come out of each college basketball season? Don't waste your time counting. The total number is too large to count. The point is, on any given night, anything can happen that's front-page news the following day. Wofford can beat North Carolina. A 98-year-old known as Sister Jean can become the highlight of March Madness, while Loyola Chicago makes the Final Four. A freshman can display Steph Curry-esque range on a Tuesday in a town called Norman, Oklahoma. 3 elite freshmen can invade the campus of one of the biggest brands in all of college basketball. Or 1 freshman from Southern Indiana can go and change the culture around a blue blood program looking to end a long championship drought. What I'm trying to tell you is this: college basketball is back. Turn on your television and join the fun. There will seldom be a night without it until April. It truly is the most wonderful time of the year. Hi everybody, my name is Michael Dugan and this is The Toss-Up. Joining me we have a duo of IUSTV crew members, Jack Grossman and Michael Tilka, also co-hosts of a new podcast called The Double Foul. You can check that out. And our very own IUSTV women's basketball beat reporter, Griffin Gonzalez. It's back, guys. College basketball is back. How long have we waited for this?
Too long.
When did the title end?
Long time ago. Too long ago if you ask me. Griffin, I'll go to you on this one. Duke replaced a couple of big-name guys, a senior leader in Grayson Allen and a freshman phenom in Marvin Bagley. But they bring in 3 freshman phenoms of its own. Are they the team to beat this year?
They're definitely one of the teams. I mean, you can't make the argument about that. I mean, walking into a game every night, you are going to hear the name Zion Williamson, and you're going to hear that name R.J. Barrett, who I actually think is going to have a better season than Zion will because of how good he's looked preseason, and that guy can really shoot the ball. Are they the team to beat in March? That's going to be the question, because I think in order to win in March, you got to have some great senior leadership, and I don't know if Duke has that yet, but they're going to be fun to watch all season long.
Absolutely. Duke's going to be such a fun, enjoyable team. You have a lot of players on that team that are going to be so exciting to watch, especially Zion Williamson. Even in the preseason, he's been showing up and showing out with a lot of dunks, and we really haven't seen a player with a frame like his in so long. He's 285 pounds of just pure muscle. I mean, the guy could play linebacker for Duke, and he might actually have more success for the Duke football team than he would the Duke basketball team. But I have a hard time thinking that even though they are going to be an exciting team and will still be a solid team, you still have to go through Virginia, North Carolina, and that tough ACC.
Yeah, the ACC is probably the best basketball conference again this year, but I'm not sold on Duke yet because they have all this youth talent and they really all play the same position. I mean, both Zion, R.J. Barrett, and Cam Reddish, they're all wings. They all like to dominate the ball. They like to have the ball in their hands. And I don't know how that's going to gel between the 3 of them. Who's going to be able to say, I'm going to be the primary ball handler? There's also a little guy named Trey Jones who's a really good point guard that likes to handle the ball. So there's only one ball on the floor, and that's going to be interesting how it plays out. Plus, none of them are great three-point shooters, and Coach K has struggled. They're not great three-point shooters.
I don't know. R.J. Barrett has looked just fantastic. I mean, I was watching him the other night against who knows what Virginia D2 school. But, I mean, I think he started out 5 for 5 from deep. He is fantastic. I think he's a fantastic
He's known as streaky at best. He was at 32% in high school. He wasn't known as a great shooter. He was a great scorer, kind of like what we see in Indiana Romeo Langford, great scorer, maybe not a great shooter yet. I don't know how the floor spacing and how the ball distribution is going to work for Duke, but they very well could be a team still with all that talent that could cut the nets down in March.
Now, from a big-name team with a lot of youngsters to a lesser-name team with a lot of experienced guys, Nevada. They're in the top 10 in the preseason polls, and they were a possession away from making the Elite Eight last year. How far can they go this year? Are they legit?
It depends if they play defense. It really does. They did not defend last year. That's a reason why they blew a double-digit lead to Loyola in the Sweet 16. They were 107th in the Ken Palm defensive efficiency ratings, and if they don't improve on that, it doesn't matter if you have the Martin twins back. It doesn't matter if Musselman's back. You're not going to win a title. In the Ken Palm era, since 2002, only one team has been able to win a national title without being top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, and until Nevada proves they can do that, I can't trust them to go deep in the tournament.
Here's the big thing that I see with Nevada that could be their biggest struggle, and it's not even something that's under their control. We've seen in years past, we've had Wichita State teams, we've had St. Mary's, Gonzaga's, a lot of these absolutely dominant mid-major programs, and they've done great in the regular season. But when that time comes to get seeded for the NCAA tournament, the committee doesn't have that respect for those mid-major teams. So I have a hard time thinking that I think there certainly is the possibility they could have a 30-win season, but come tournament time, the committee, I'm not sure, is going to be able to respect the effort that the Martin twins are going to put in, and Eric Musselman, who's the head coach in Reno. And I'm not sure if the Wolfpack is going to get that love that they deserve and have earned throughout the season.
The basketball committee has shown that repeat offenders, I guess in a good way in this case, teams that have had sustained success over multiple years usually get seeded a little bit better. Plus, we have seen Wichita State make the Final Four, Gonzaga make the title game, and so on and so forth.
It's definitely not impossible, but that's something that's sitting in the back of my mind, and we won't know the answer until March. Yeah.
I'm going back to, it's not going to be a question of whether this team is going to be great and going to be a deep run team in the tournament. This is a question, is this team title worthy? And if you look over the past few years, yeah, you have the Loyolas, the Gonzagas, the Butlers, but at the end of the day, we know who's going to be hosting up a trophy at the end of the night, and it's going to be a Power 5 conference team. That's just what it comes down to. It comes to the guys that can get the strength of schedule, the guys who are going to have the best recruits out of high school. And at the end of the day, Nevada, as good as they are, is not going to be a championship team at the end of the season.
But you mentioned that strength of schedule, and Mid-Major Madness did a full evaluation of a lot of mid-major schools' schedules, and they said they have the best non-conference schedule for a mid-major, and the team has been proud and boasting of that. They have a strong, loyal Chicago team. That's probably the biggest highlight of their schedule. So I don't think strength of schedule is going to be too big of an issue for this Wolfpack squad.
The problem is once you get into conference play, you have all these marquee matchups in conference. The question is, can Nevada win enough of those non-conference games? They're going to be a 28, 29, 31 team, but they got to get as many resume statements as they can early in the season.
What a game that's going to be. What a game that's going to be.
Absolutely.
I've got my eyes glued to that one. Jack, back to you. The Big Ten this year, wide open. Who's the favorite?
There really isn't a favorite. There's no elite teams this year. Last year you had the top 4 teams of Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, and Purdue, and then no one else. The Big Ten is going to be a lot more balanced this year, but there's no elite teams. I'm looking at Michigan maybe, even though they lost a lot from that team last year. They still bring back Xavier Simpson, who was huge down the stretch last season. They bring back Charles Matthews, who's one of the best 2 guards in the country. John Teske played some big minutes behind Mo Wagner. It's going to be a very different-looking Michigan team, but John Beilein's one of the best coaches, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country. So if I had to put my money on anyone, I guess it would be Michigan, but the Big Ten's just a mess to try to figure out this year.
Yeah, we're looking at a Big Ten that has the potential to be weaker than they were last year. Last year, only sending 4 teams, the least amount of teams the Big Ten has sent to the Big Dance since 2008. I was 10 in 2008. That's kind of wild. And I think if I did have to put my money on someone, I think I'm going to go with Michigan State. Even though they have big holes to fill with Miles Bridges and Jaren Jackson leaving for the pros, I think Nick Ward and Cassius Winston are still 2 of the best players in the Big Ten, and perhaps maybe even the best duo. Maybe Juwan Morgan and Romeo Langford might have something to say about that later on in the season. But I think with their experience of handling Big Ten talent, I have a hard time betting against Sparty.
Am I the only one who's excited that we don't know who's going to be the best team in the Big Ten this year?
I'm very excited.
We have been in a Big Ten that's been dominated by the same 3 teams for the past 15 years. I'm just overjoyed that we're going to have an actual question. Can Nebraska be the best team in the Big Ten? That's a possibility.
It's real.
Year.
That's a real
That's
possibility.
the real thing that have people talking. And I think that's something we need to look forward to. The Big Ten's going to be very competitive this year. It's going to be very close games, and there's going to be games where, you know what, you might have Penn State win some key matchups at Michigan State. Do I dare say it? It might happen. But no, this is going to be a fun season in the Big Ten. I agree with Toka. I do think Michigan State just brings back the most powerful guys, and they do have Tom Izzo. So I do think that's a huge advantage on their side. So I do see them being up top, but I mean, don't shy away from a Nebraska being up there, or an Indiana, or a Michigan.
Nebraska not getting a lot of love in terms of the Big Ten preseason polls. Now let's go to national teams that are not getting a lot of love in those polls. Jack, what is a team outside of the top 15 that could surprise people and make a deep run this season?
Well, I think it's got to be Michigan. I don't know if they're going to have the regular season results, but they're going to do enough to make the tournament. And there's been no better coach than John Beilein. I'm sorry that I'm repeating with Michigan here, but
Jay Wright would like a word with you, by the way.
well, I mean, I'm sorry. John Beilein's won 2 straight Big Ten tournaments. He's always has his team playing its best at the right times, and he knows how to press the right buttons. And yes, Jay Wright's won 2 of the last 3 titles, but outside of that, there's no one else that I'd rather trust in March right now to win games than John Beilein. So that would be, Indiana would be up there as well. So would a couple other teams, but I'm high on Michigan.
I think I'm going to go back to touch Griffin's point. We were talking about football schools, even though Nebraska's struggling a little bit. I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers. I think the SEC is a much improved conference this year. They sent a record high 7 teams to the Big Dance last year. And I think there's a very good chance that they do the same thing this year. And the big thing I'm seeing with Auburn is that I think experience is a little bit overrated in college basketball, with players getting younger and younger and showing that they can succeed. But something that isn't overrated is chemistry. And with Auburn, they bring back so much of that talent from last year, and the players being able to know sort of the nuances between one another. I think Auburn's got a great position to be poised at not only taking the SEC from Kentucky, but making that deep run in the playoffs.
He took mine, but I'm going to go no, but I'm going to make an argument. You know what? A big conversation needs to be had about the state of Indiana basketball team. State of Indiana doesn't have a basketball team that's ranked right now, which is weird considering the fact that the years that Purdue had, Indiana have had, Notre Dame, Butler has had in the past few years in that top 15. I would love to see a big push from one of those schools. I know Mike Bray is probably, arguably, I would make the argument that he is the best coach in the state of Indiana. I think he's very talented. I think he always has his guys ready to make a Sweet 16 run. I think they could be very talented. And I think Archie Miller has actually some fun tools to play with this year. And it has such a deep bench that Indiana has not had in a long, long time. It's going to be fun to see what this state of Indiana can do this year. I think they're going to make some damage, and I don't think there will be a question that there will be a few Indiana top 15 teams by the end of the season.
Indiana is really the biggest question mark, I think, in the country right now, because you have Romeo Langford, you have Jawan Morgan, but who else? You have a lot of bench guys that are unproven, Justin Smith, Jaron Davis, Rob Finnessy, so on and so forth. If those guys can step up and take big jumps, whether it be coming from high school to college or freshman to sophomore jumps, Indiana could be that team that jumps into the top 15 and really becomes an elite team this year, but there's just so many question marks there for them.
Not to mention, you have a guy who was arguably the National Player of the Year last year in Carson Edwards at Purdue. So, I mean, there's just a lot of, like you said, question marks around the state of Indiana over which of these teams is going to break through, because I guarantee you it's going to be one of those big 4.
Notre Dame battled some health issues last year, but Mike Bray, I'm glad you brought that up. I refer to him as the more exciting Bo Ryan outside of the Big Ten. He does not recruit very well, but he will consistently get guys that cause headaches to opponents for 4 straight years. That's what Mike Bray does. All right, well, we're going to jump to break real quick, but coming up after the break, our plan will play Tell Me Why, we'll do our lightning round, and we have a new segment with some stakes, so stick with us. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. We're talking national college hoops here. I'm joined by the first and second half of the Double Foul podcast, Jack and Michael, and our IUS TV basketball reporter, Griffin Gonzalez. But before we continue, we're going to toss it to Murphy Wheeler, who's got a special segment for us. Murphy?
Thanks, Michael. The 2018-19 season hasn't quite started yet, but it's never too early to start thinking about March. Let's take a look at some of my predictions for this year's NCAA tournament. So starting off, let's look at the South region, where I have my #1 overall seed this year in Kentucky. The top 4 seeds in this bracket here, along with the Wildcats, are Virginia as a 2 seed, Kansas State as a 3, and Florida State as a 4. There's also a couple of Big Ten schools here, with Michigan as a 6 seed and Maryland as a 9. Moving down to the West region, Gonzaga, Nevada, North Carolina, and Syracuse come in as the top 4 seeds, while Purdue is the lone Big Ten representative as in this section as an 8 seed. Nevada and Syracuse could both be dangerous teams come tournament time. On the Midwest region, Kansas is the number 1 seed, followed by Tennessee, Michigan State, and Virginia Tech. Michigan State isn't the only Big Ten team here, as Nebraska comes in as an 8 seed. Of course, last year's Cinderella story, Loyola Chicago, comes in with a much better seeding than they did last year as a 7 seed. Finally, in the East region, Duke, Villanova, Auburn, and West Virginia are the top 4. This is where I have IU as a 5 seed. I think with the talent and depth that they have on this year's roster, they are more than capable of attaining a seed anywhere in the range of a 4, 5, or 6. As the season progresses, make sure to keep up with my updates of Murphytology throughout the season. Back to you, Michael.
All right, guys, we're going to play Tell Me Why. This is a game you've all played before. I don't need to explain the rules. But for the audience, I will. I give you a statement. You tell me why. Griffin, will go to you first. Tell me why the Big Ten sends more teams to the big dance this year than it did last year.
Last year, you had the top 4 teams, and then you had a big gap between the rest. This year, you're going to have more even teams. You're going to have a lot of them that are going to make a contention for the tournament run, and you're going to have a lot of teams, I think, at the bottom of the Big Ten that might even find themselves on the bubble, i.e., dare say it, Penn State. It's going to be a lot closer this year.
I think what you're looking at this year in the Big Ten is I think Michigan and Michigan State are for sure going to make the tournament. I think Ohio State and Purdue have a bit of regression this year, but I think 3 teams are able to get Indiana, the Big Ten from that 4 to 5. I think Indiana's one of those teams, and I think Nebraska finally breaks through. They had a great 13-5 conference record last year, but obviously Big Ten wasn't that strong. I think they're able to finally hit that NCAA tournament, and then finally I think Wisconsin bounces back. They had a great streak of consecutive NCAA appearances, but now I think Ethan Happ says, I've had enough. I'm going out with a bang. I want to go to the tournament.
I honestly think the Big Ten's going to need to make a statement early in the season. They have Michigan State playing Kansas in the Champions Classic. You have the Gavin game tip-ups. You have the ACC Big Ten Challenge. The Big Ten's going to have to make a strong showing because in recent years, the NCAA Tournament Committee has not shown much support to the Big Ten Conference. They have really been rough on the Big Ten because the Big Ten hasn't been good the last few years. So, and you take away those elite teams that the Big Ten's had the past few years, the tournament committee has not put in the bubble teams in the Big Ten Conference, whether it be last year with Nebraska, Penn State, so on and so forth. So I don't know if the Big Ten gets as many as they got in last year just because there's no elite teams and the committee hasn't been high in the Big Ten, and that's correct on the committee because the Big Ten hasn't been good. So they need to get some non-conference resume-building wins going into conference season.
Jack, you are from Kentucky. Tell me why the Wildcats don't win the SEC.
Because the SEC is good. It is.
This is basketball. We're not talking about football. We're talking about basketball.
Yeah, it is very weird to say the SEC. Outside the ACC, I think the SEC is the best basketball conference in the country, and it is a really good conference. Tennessee's legit. They bring back everyone from the team that actually won the SEC last year, not Kentucky. You have Florida, who's really good. South Carolina's going to be better. Alabama loses Colin Sexton, but they still got some nice pieces. Mississippi State's going to be better. Auburn's still going to be good, even though they lost Mustafa Heron. The SEC's good. It is really, really good, and Kentucky has a lot of youth. They're going to be mixing in some chemistry. Yes, they bring back some guys from last year. So it's really just a toss-up in the SEC this year. Yes, it is a toss-up.
I see what you did there.
Yes.
Clever. I think one team that you're leaving out of that conversation is Mississippi State.
I said Mississippi State.
I'm not sure I heard Mississippi State. I will have to talk to my sources.
The
check
team I left out was Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the one I left out.
I just want to double check. But again, I think the Big Ten beats itself up in a bad way, but I think the SEC kind of beats itself up in a good way just because there's so much great talent in that conference. Again, record high, 7 teams making it out of the conference last year. I think they reached that same number again, and I think that it's too much for Kentucky.
They don't reach that mark this year. They exceed that mark.
Griffin's chomping at the bit. Griffin, you got to go, man.
Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. When it comes to the SEC, I think it's the same thing with football. Overhyped. Listen, there's a lot of good teams here. There's a lot of good recruits. There's a lot of great coaches. But saying that the SEC is going to be better than the Big Ten, listen, if we're going to put a Power 5 tournament together and put all the teams in this one Power 5 tournament, the SEC is on the same level of the Pac-12. They're going to be lucky to get past game one. And I know this is a hot take right now.
I'm sitting back for this one.
But I'm being honest with you. I look at these teams in the SEC, and I just don't see great basketball teams like the ACC and arguably the top of the Big Ten has.
What is the top of the Big Ten right now? There is no top of the Big Ten.
What I mean is, I see a lot of inconsistency. You look at what happened with Auburn last year, a strong start with a terrible finish. I just think there's a lot of teams in the SEC who's going to play a half season great and a half season terrible.
That's better than what some of the Big Ten teams are going to do, though.
That's true. That is what half the Big Ten teams are going to do, but we do know what we're going to get from a Michigan State. We do know what we're going to get from a Michigan a few games in. We just don't know what we're going to get from an SEC team if it's not named Kentucky. So, yeah, I don't think Kentucky will be the championship of the SEC this year. I think they'll be regular season champions, not tournament. I do think the tournament will go to an Auburn or Tennessee. But I just go back to the SEC is one conference that we love to hype up every year as, wow, they're good at basketball this year. And just every year.
Outside of last year, when has the SEC been hyped up? I've never heard hyped up. I've heard it being
SEC don't play nobody, Jack.
Yeah, but I mean, you have the SEC. They've gotten talent. They have Kentucky by itself has more ESPN top 100 recruits than the Big Ten as a whole has. Tennessee has more than the Big Ten as a whole has. Vanderbilt has more than the Big Ten as a whole has. There's more talent in the SEC. The coaches, Ben Howland took UCLA to a couple of Final Fours. Rick Barnes coached a guy named Kevin Durant at Texas.
I've heard of
John
him.
Calipari won a title at Kentucky. You have good coaching in the SEC. You don't have that as much in the Big Ten outside of Izzo, Beeline, and maybe Archie Miller. You just don't have that. Plus, you had the SEC. They got over the hump. They won the Big 12 SEC Challenge last year. They got the 7 teams into the tournament, and a fair amount of those teams had success last year. The numbers say it. The talent says it. The eye test says it. The SEC's good at basketball, Griffin. I know we hate that up here, but here in Bloomington, but the SEC is very good at basketball.
I think we got to move on after that. I think that was a pretty good selling point right there. Griffin, we'll go to you right now. Tell me why Virginia does or does not, you have some flexibility here, bounce back and makes a run this year under Tony Bennett.
Listen, I don't think they do, and I love Tony Bennett as a coach. He was one, I think, when the Indiana job opened up, one that a lot of people wanted him to fill. I think Tony Bennett's a great coach, but this is a team that really hasn't been the same since Malcolm Brogdon. And I do think they will compete this year. I do think they're very good, but at the same time, I just don't think they have the pieces necessary to make another run. Are they going to be a top 5 seed again? Probably, but I don't think they're going to make another run in the tournament.
I think I understand the historical context of, yes, Virginia is the first 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed. Not only did they lose, but they got smacked by UMBC. But I don't think there's really anything wrong going on in Charlottesville. You return the National Coach of the Year in Tony Bennett. You return Kyle Guy, an Indiana native, who is one of the top players in all of college basketball. I don't see what the big deal is with Virginia. I understand it's a big loss, but I don't think it's the loss that's going to shatter Cavaliers fans' hearts.
Griff and I are going at it tonight. This is fun because Virginia last season without Malcolm Brogdon, it's forgotten because of the UMBC game, but they were the best team in the country throughout the majority of the season last year. There's a reason they were the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. They've won the ACC regular season 2 years in a row. They won the tournament last year. This is a really good team. They have one of the best coaches in the country in Tony Bennett. They bring back Ty Jerome, Kyle Guy, Jack Salt, DeAndre Hunter, which, by the way, DeAndre Hunter sprained his ankle, did not play in that UMBC game. You have to remember that. So, I mean, I'm not going to bet on this team going deep into March because Tony Bennett usually doesn't do that. But this is going to be a top 10 team all season long, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and they could possibly win their 3rd straight regular season ACC title.
Yeah, and let me clarify. Is Virginia going to be good this year? Yes, they're going to be good. They're going to compete in the ACC, and I do think they are one of the favorites. What I'm trying to argue is, are they going to make a title run? Probably not, just because that's not the kind of coach Bennett is. I just don't think
Yeah,
he's that
they're
good.
in the boat right now. Is until they do it, I'm not going to bet on it happening.
Yeah.
That style of play doesn't typically bode well in March without a serious playmaker like Jarris Lyles was for UMBC last year, and he tore the Cavaliers up. All right, guys, it's some exciting news right here. It's time for a new game. I have the sheet of integrity right here. It's creatively named Trivia Time. I have 6 questions for you. We will go in a row. The winner will go first in the lightning round. Griffin, we will start with you. The first question. Which of these football schools has not made the Final Four? Is it LSU? Is it Auburn? Is it Florida State? Or is it Mississippi State?
Oh, the Final Four.
The Final Four in program history. Which of those has never made it?
Oh, I'm going to say Mississippi State.
Mr. Tilka?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I think I'm gonna go Florida State here.
Mr. Grossman?
Between not LSU. I'm between Florida State and Mississippi State. I'll go Florida State.
It is Auburn.
Ah!
It is Auburn.
Charles Barkley.
Charles Barkley did not make it
Couldn't
to
get
the Final
done.
Four.
Tragic.
I knew LSU did with Big Baby Davis.
Yeah, I had them winning it all that year. Don't remind me. Out of Tennessee, Gonzaga, and Virginia, all teams in the top 10, which team has the most Final Four appearances, and how many is it? Jack, we'll start with you.
How many is it?
Out of Tennessee, Virginia, and Gonzaga, 3 top 10 teams.
Gonzaga's not Gonzaga. I'm gonna go with Virginia, and they have been to 3.
Gonzaga's been to 4, and I'm going to say that super confidently because I'm not even sure if that's the right answer.
I almost had to double check my answer. You're so confident
Wow,
there.
wow, absolutely crazy.
I'm going to go Virginia with 5.
It's Virginia with 2.
Ralph Sampson.
Only 2 from Virginia.
Thought
So,
I had it. I
so
thought I was
half
so
points for
confident.
Jack and I, right?
You can split. You'll each get a point here.
There we go.
All right.
You're sitting atop the leaderboard. That
Team
vote,
Goose Egg, let's go.
To quantify that would have just been a bonus for your spirits. 2-time national champion Jay Wright played college ball where? Bucknell, Lehigh, St. John's, or Villanova?
I'm going to go Bucknell just because I like Bucknell.
Okay.
You can't just gesture it. Griffin, you're the
Griffin,
first.
I'll
You're going
make the
first.
rules here. It's Griffin.
St. John's.
Lehigh.
We're all tied.
Woo! Team
Bucknell.
Goose Egg. It's no longer Team Goose Egg. Let's go.
All right, in the last 5 years, we'll keep it recent, who was the youngest coach to win a national championship? You have 5 seconds to answer, so you don't think back.
I'll say Jay Wright.
Jay Wright.
Jay Wright.
Kevin Ollie.
Oh my God, that was a
Kevin
thing.
I forgot
Ollie.
UConn used to be
knew that would
good.
get you
I
guys.
forgot they used to be good.
I knew that would get you guys. All right, 5th question. Which school is the only one to make 4 championship games and never lose?
Michigan. Oh, never.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Uh-oh.
you got bad memory there. I'll go with. I really don't have a good answer for this. I'll say North Carolina.
UCLA.
It's UConn.
UConn.
Kevin Ollie. There it is. See, you knew it.
Yep, I
We're
knew
still
it. I
tied
said
at
it
1,
wrong.
so
Yep.
we may need to go to the tiebreaker question, which is coming after this one. I love this question. Which of these teams has not won a national championship? Is it Wyoming? Is it Loyola Chicago? Is it the City College of New York? Or is it Dartmouth?
Wait, not won any.
Not won a national title. Wyoming, Loyola Chicago, the City College of New York, or Dartmouth?
Do we get bonus points if I can name one of the years that one team won it?
I'm sorry, no.
Dartmouth.
I'm gonna go Dartmouth because I'm pretty sure CCNY has won one.
I'm going to go Dartmouth, too. Just so if
come
we're
on.
all
Okay,
right,
we're going to the
right.
tiebreaker round. We're going to the tiebreaker round. It
Were we
was
right?
Dartmouth. They were
Yeah.
runners-up in 1942 and 1944.
CCNY 1951.
1943, the year in between that, Wyoming actually won it.
Go Cowboys.
How about that?
Josh
All
Allen.
right, the tiebreaker here. Which school, perhaps ironically, hosted the first Final Four in 1939?
I'm going to let you guys guess first because I know it.
Of course I know it.
Uh-oh. I think we have a winner. I think we know who's going first in the lightning round.
Host, the irony part's throwing me off.
Yeah, I'm not making the same mistake twice.
I'm gonna say Louisville. I guess I'll go with Louisville.
I'm going to go Villanova.
Northwestern.
It is Northwestern.
Of course. Of
Patton
course.
Gymnasium, 5 minutes from my home on Sheridan Road. All right, guys, it's time for the lightning round. Jack, you're going first. The first question is the freshman of the year is going to be who?
Nazir Little, North Carolina. He's going to bring a new dimension to the Tar Heels, and they're going to win the ACC this year.
Bol dominates the West Coast. 7'3" height, 7'8" wingspan. Absolutely dominates in the Conference of Champions.
Oh, I'm going to go R.J. Barrett. I do think he's looked fantastic preseason. I think he's actually going to overshadow other guys on his team like Zion Williamson. I think he's going to be the favorite for the Dukies.
Coach of the year.
Ooh,
to you,
you
Griffin.
know what? I'm going to go bold here. I'm going to go Steve Alford at UCLA. I
Whoa.
think they're going to have possibly.
Whoa.
He's kind of not on the radar right now. I think they're going to have a great year. I think Chris Wilkes is going to have a fantastic sophomore season. He looked to go pro last year, which means he's coming back with a little bit of knowledge from NBA scouts of what he can improve on. I think they're going to be solid.
I'll go Eric Musselman out of Nevada. I think this is one of the best years that we'll ever see for a mid-major program, and I think Musselman's a big part of it.
Greg Gard, the Classic A program, has a really down year, bounce back the next year, even though they have a lot of the same talent.
I think Greg Gard has to be the odds-on favorite, at least in the Big Ten. Dark horse team to make a run, Jack.
Indiana, they have the talent. It's a lot of questions of whether they'll be able to use that talent, but if they do, they're going to be a scary team to beat.
Why not Gonzaga? I mean, they're
They're number 3 in the country.
They're still number 3 in the country, but they aren't the
bets
most
on
talked
them?
about mid-major. So I'm going to throw their name out there.
I know I was hating on them earlier in the show, but I'm going to go Nevada. I just do think when you talk about that strength of schedule and the, not conference play, and you talk about what they're bringing back and what they kind of want after being one possession away from an Elite Eight, that can really boost a team. And I think you're bringing back a great coach in Musselman. They're going to be scary this year.
Got to make it quick here. There's 4 teams in 10 seconds. If the Final Four were tomorrow, your 4 teams would be?
Kentucky, Duke, Gonzaga, and North Carolina.
Wow, beat the clock. Easy.
Wow. That's high. That's a lot of pressure. I'll go Auburn, Iowa State, Duke, and Michigan State. Got to have 2 oddballs in there.
Gotta
The
have it.
Cyclones!
Every year. Every year.
Wow, the guy from Iowa picks a school from Iowa. Who would have guessed?
Shocking. Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, Gonzaga. Kentucky cuts down the nets.
Okay. No arguments here from any of that. I think all of those are good teams, and we'll see what happens.
Not the Iowa State. I don't like the Iowa
You
State.
have to
Why?
pick 2. He was exactly right. You have
There's
to pick
always 2 weird teams that make it. There's always
There's
2.
a minimum of 1. At minimum.
UMBC comes back.
There you go. No Jared Sliles, though. That's a big loss.
Yes.
All right, it's the end of the show. Time for last word, Griffin. Your last word on the upcoming season is what?
This is going to be unpredictable. I just think you're going to have a lot of surprises this year. Really, nothing's going to, really be written in stone quite yet. It's going to be fun to watch.
I'm going to go with space because there's space to be filled at the top of a lot of these conferences. The SEC with Kentucky perhaps getting dethroned. Maybe Kansas finally drops that 14, or they're aiming for their 15th straight Big 12 title. Maybe they don't get it. And obviously with the Big 10 and Pac-12, there's always seems like a new team on the top there.
Last time I checked, this is last words. I'm only going to say one. Madness.
That's the best last word out of Tilcon.
Heck
I
yes.
think we've had on this show
Team
so
Goose
far.
Egg, let's go.
All right, guys. Well, that's the show. Thank you for tuning in, but be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUS TV Sports and on Facebook at IUS TV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions that you might have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.